Look at me with these fancy vlogging angles. Oh my god, leans against laundry basket. But I'm gonna embrace this. Wow, it's me, the Bi Book Boy. I'm vlogging because something super exciting happened and I'm gonna introduce you guys to a new and fancy friend. But first, if you're new here, my name is Logan and I'm a chaotic bisexual. I create semi-annual bisexual. Semi-annual? Yeah, once a year. A couple of years, I post. I create semi-regular chaotic bisexual content. If you want more of it, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on notifications, all that fun stuff, and you'll find out whenever I decide to post something new. If you notice, the lighting on this side is different. That's because my fancy reading chair came. You guys, I've never felt more sandwiched in a big smush muffin of love. Anyway, as any good booktuber knows, a thrilling change of scenery deserves a thrilling list of books. Let's get on to work. Oh my god, the noise in this one is strong. I live on a very busy cross street in a major city in the US. It's gonna be hard. I'm using my notes, even though I'm not a professional. Do I take notes when I read? Yes, I do, because I miss academia. Also addressing the elephant in the room. Yes, it is now daylight. Yes, it was nighttime when I filmed the intro. That's because I filmed this entire video and then realized my camera was not recording. What do I say about this book? Oh my god, it's so good. It gets the grandma seal of approval. That should be a thing. Oh my god, the Italian grandma seal of approval. Yeah, I started a trend that only I am gonna follow. Karin Slaughter's Pretty Girls is a tale of two sisters named Claire and Lydia. The abduction of their sister at a young age leads them both to seeking very different lifestyles, and we find them in present day. This next part is a bit of a spoiler, but it happens within the first chapter, so I don't really count it as a spoiler. Claire's husband is murdered. Details of his murder start to connect to the abduction of a young girl in present day that is strikingly similar to the abduction of their sister. Things get crazy and we start investigating. Things I loved about this book. The character development is incredible. Lydia has a crazy past with drugs and addiction. She used it to like self-medicate and everything like that. They went through trauma. It's wonderful. Claire and her now deceased husband apparently had a very rocky relationship, which she thought was fine, but it's the more that we discover it, the more we find out that he was actually really emotionally abusive. Spoiler alert. And the development of that relationship is incredible. I don't think I have ever read a more well-written, emotionally abusive and manipulative character than Claire's recently deceased husband. Like, the gaslighting that goes on is so well crafted and incredible that not only is Claire being, oh, excuse me. I just drank a lot of coffee, you guys, because it's the morning and I need coffee to be a person, I'm sorry. Anyway, not only is Claire gaslit, but we the readers are gaslit the entire time into going, oh my god, I really hope that she's misremembering. I really hope that he's not actually as awful as a person as we thought, as we seem to think he is, even though she remembers him being amazing, and in the few seconds that we do know him before he's ixnay on the life, he seems like a pretty great dude. So, we're just sitting here defending him the whole time, even though we know that we shouldn't be. It's incredible. The legal aspect is very well developed, which as a reader of thrillers is hard to do. I'm also a huge true crime junkie, so I have a really weird understanding of the way that the legal system actually works and the relationship between like the FBI and local precincts, etc., etc. And that's not often done well in a book. This book got it right. I can tell that she spent a very long time researching all of these situations, and I really, really appreciated it because it added a whole nother layer to the story. She also went with a very realistic Golden State Killer approach in that not all the cops in this are trustworthy. In fact, none of them are, which is very real. The mistrust of law enforcement adds another layer to the story, and it adds to the tension, and it is really wonderfully crafted, which is again hard to do because it could verge on being kitschy because that is a bit of a stereotype nowadays, but she does it well and takes the time to develop it, and it is so appreciated. Oh my goodness. Also, in the vein of corrupt policing, this book is a very well developed conversation about victim blaming in criminal investigation. If you are not aware, there's a very dangerous trend in policing that has been going on since the Dark Ages, in which if a woman is assaulted, abducted, murdered, etc., usually the first question we ask is, oh, but what was she wearing? And then it turns into this gross cycle of victim blaming that specifically happens to women. Sometimes it happens to men, but it happens in the current society. It happens a lot and is very damaging to women. And it can be incredibly damaging to criminal investigation. Oftentimes, the perpetrators are not even caught because the cops are too focused on talking about why the crime happened to the victim. That is a very watered down explanation of that. I could spend multiple videos just talking about that, but I'm not going to because this is a book channel. If you want a really accurate portrayal of that in a fictional story, though, and how damaging that societal viewpoint is, this is the book for you. Also, I'm not going to spoil the ending for you, but I have never read, I can say to this day, a more satisfying conclusion to a thriller. I was gasping. I read the last, I want to say 200 pages of this book in the same night. I could not put it down. 5 stars. This was an incredible introduction to Karin Slaughter. Please, please, please give me some recommendations down below for more Karin Slaughter books because I need to read more. And I would love to review them for you guys. Next, I read The June Boys by Court Stevens. This book just came out in 2020. It has been a very talked about subject on BookTube as far as I can tell. I think I made a mistake by hyping myself up a lot when I bought this book. There was like a period of time, like a week-long period of time between when I bought this book and when I picked it up and read it, because I made use of the curbside delivery at a wonderful bookstore and was safe and wore a mask. It was wonderful and it was good and it made me happy. Anyway, I also did an unfair thing and started reading this book the same night that I finished Pretty Girls. In my head, my brain was comparing the two, which was very unfair because that is a very, very adult book that deals with very adult subjects, and this is definitely a young adult book, which I did not prepare for because I went into this book knowing very little about it. Even though I watched a lot of reviews, I avoided spoilers and I really didn't want to know that much because I like to go into books blind, you know? That's a lie. I read so many books after watching movies, which is probably bad. I'll do a video about all the books I watched the movies first. Yes! In The June Boys, we follow our protagonist Thea as she investigates the disappearance of her cousin, Alice. For the past 10 years in this region of North Carolina and Tennessee, young boys have been going missing on June 1st and being held captive for a year and then being delivered back to the society, delivered back to the public the next July. Like, what I think is the most terrifying part of this book is that besides all the psychological effects of being kept underground in a secluded, dark place for over a year and not seeing anybody, the boys are relatively unharmed. They're usually well fed, they're usually well taken care of, and they often have a very weird, like, savior complex towards the Gemini thief, the person who has kidnapped them. Anyway, I had high hopes for this book. We're going to talk about the things I love first. The character Alice is one of the most wonderfully written characters I've ever read. Every 3rd chapter, it switches to the point of view of Thea's cousin Alice, who is the most recently abducted of the boys, and is currently living in the very small space, whatever, it's not really defined for a very long time where they're being kept, with 3 other boys, and they are dealing with the fact that the Gemini thief has not come back to feed them. Something has happened, something has changed, and they are no longer being cared for the way that they have been for the past year. Therefore, he takes it upon himself as his responsibility to ensure the survival of the other boys. While doing this, he starts writing letters to an unseen character named Elizabeth. Actually, at the very end of the book, you find out who Elizabeth is, and it's actually really cool. I really appreciated that part of the story. But I'm not going to spoil it for you. He starts writing letters to Elizabeth detailing his journey of caring for the boys and ensuring their survival, and it's incredibly well developed. You feel like you're in the bunker with them and you really feel the tension. If he doesn't find ways to keep them well nourished and make sure that they are surviving in a basement or dungeon, or I don't know how to describe it. The isolation effect is very well developed and you have no idea where they are. It's really wonderful. Anyway, she explores that theme really well and I love it. Court Stevens also really understands the voice of a teenager who has been forced to grow up faster than they should. Hollis's voice really evolves when he takes on the responsibility of caring for these other boys and ensuring their survival. It's really wonderful. She also juxtaposes that in direct conflict with his need to still be young and his need to still find hope in the world. I am losing the ability to speak in full sentences, you guys. Oh my God, I don't know what's happening. Anyway, that part was incredible. That being said, this is just my opinion. The book as a whole was kind of a letdown, you guys. In my opinion, this is a prime example of someone creating really cool ideas and then not taking the time to flesh them out. For example, Alice's storyline takes a very dark turn in which she starts to contemplate whether it's actually kindness or cruelty to keep these boys alive down there with him. He explores a very wonderful and very dark mental thought process. It gets really psychological and really philosophical, and I enjoyed every second of that. And then in the last chapter, no spoilers, she pulls up, "Oh, you've been imagining most of this. You've been suffering effects of isolation. You're actually just crazy. None of that was real. It's okay. None of the decisions you made have any effect on your real life." It was so frustrating. It fully negated and erased all of the beautiful character development that happened to my precious Alice, and I was so mad. Just my opinion, some of you may love that twist. Secondly, besides Thea and Alice and Thea's father, the rest of these characters really feel like stock characters. In my opinion, there were too many characters, none of them were developed well enough. We only spend a little bit of time with each of them. We really don't get to know them, which does kind of add to the mistrust of everybody in a way. However, it really just made it hard to connect or care about anybody in this book besides Alice. And Alice isn't even the protagonist. When I don't care if the main protagonist's dad is actually the killer, spoiler alert, for a good portion of this book, and comes up in the first chapter. It's even written in the dust jacket. Thea's father is suspect number one of who the police think the Gemini thief could be. And besides exploring that specific effect on their relationship, we really don't get any insight into her world. We spend like 3 seconds with her at high school, maybe one scene of her graduating high school and one scene of her talking to a very stereotypical principal. The principal figure was awfully written, in my opinion. I did not care about said character at all. And it's not nearly enough for me to believe that A, this character is in high school, B, the things that happen to this character are at all affecting her world in high school, or C, any of these things in this book that happen could feasibly happen to a high schooler. Not the abduction portion. That is very realistic and that happens often to high schoolers and people of all ages. I mean, the level at which this girl is allowed to be involved in the investigation process and the policing, and the level in which she is allowed to be involved in the proceedings of defending her father and other family members who eventually become suspects in the case, is completely unrealistic, and there was no character development to make me believe otherwise. This book needed a good 100 pages to develop these themes further before I would have believed it, because it was just ridiculous towards the end of it. Speaking of law enforcement and investigation, I don't mean to offend people. The law enforcement characters in this story were stereotypical at best. Thea's boyfriend's older sister is a newly inducted FBI agent. And to be honest, this woman is just an awful agent. She's just bad at her job. She goes around telling very classified information to anyone who will listen. Also, I don't feel like Court Stevens really put in any effort into developing the relationship between the FBI and the local law enforcement, as the local law enforcement are also basically incompetent in this book. And not like in a well-written, like the police are incompetent, therefore we have to take stuff into our own hands sort of way. I mean in that they were basically not there, and any evidence that they actually did try to use against the suspects would have been inadmissible in court anyway and wouldn't have held up. Like, anyone who has any knowledge of how the law actually works is reading this going, that this just, none of this would work. None of this is a case. Me trying to figure out where the law enforcement is, why they're doing any of what they're doing in this book is like the little math meme with the triangle over my eye, the little like plus and minus and like X equals Y squared, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a math major. I never was. I'm not even in college. What am I talking about? Lastly, the ending came out of nowhere, and I don't mean that in a good way. I love it when an ending surprises me in a thriller. I love it when I'm not able to guess, but then I can look back at the story and see, oh my goodness, X and Y and Z pointed to the ending, and it was incredibly well developed and really well done, and I didn't expect it at all, but now that I see it, I love it. Sadly, in my opinion, such is not the case here. The idea and the concept behind who the Gemini killer actually ends up being is a really cool idea, but it's never developed. Therefore, it just feels like a really stereotypical choice that I had a very hard time believing and cannot support when explaining it to anybody. Read it for yourself, I guess, and if you disagree, comment below. Let's have a discussion, because I would love for someone to explain how this is even a conceivable ending to the book. After that ending, there's an epilogue in which she tries to tie up every little end to the story. I thought it was completely unneeded and a waste of pages. She even shoves two random characters that have only met a couple of times into a very creepy and unneeded relationship, and then spends a paragraph justifying why said relationship is happening, trying to make it sound like a cool, positive thing, when really I'm just like, there's no need for this, and I didn't care if either of these characters had a romantic interest in each other, and they didn't throughout the entire book, so why are you doing this now? I give it a 3 because I love Alice, and I think this book is worth reading for the Alice chapters. However, I just feel like at the end of the day, I need to pick up a different Court Stevens novel and see if it's better, because I've heard really good things about this author, and I really want to like her work. I just don't think this was a good introduction to her work. There are multiple incredible authors who have semi-okay books. If anybody has any recommendations on Court Stevens' book, drop them in the comments below, because I've never read any of her stuff and I would like to read more. Ah! I lost my notes! The last book I read this week was Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Confession, I have read this book before. I read it when it first came out. That was a while ago, and I wanted to refresh my memory because I just watched the HBO show again, and I love the HBO show, so I wanted to see how it compared. This is still one of my favorite thrillers I have ever read. We are ending on a positive note. Sharp Objects follows our protagonist, Camille. Camille is a reporter who returns to her hometown in the South to investigate the disappearance of a girl in her hometown. While she is there, another girl's body turns up, and the investigation gets thicker. Camille Preaker is one of my favorite protagonists I've ever read because she is a flawed and often unreliable narrator. Camille has had a very traumatic past, which we explore throughout the book. I won't spoil it for you, it's very good. But because of that, she self-medicates through alcoholism and self-harm. Therefore, she's not sober for a lot of this book, and you don't actually know if what you're seeing is real. Her alcoholism is a beautifully developed plot point that allows for another layer of the mystery, because you're second guessing everything that happens, because she could not be sober right now. There's also a scene in which she is with her little sister and they get high, and that added effect on everything causes a lot of confusion as to what actually happens in the scene. It's a very important scene, and I really, really, really love it. Another favorite thing of mine about this book, the atmosphere that this author creates is incredible. This book is set in the South, and it is so atmospheric that when I read it, I can hear the cicadas in my head. The speech patterns of all of the characters are exactly right. You can hear the lilt in all of their phrases. There is also an incredible subplot that explores the relationships between Camille and all of the members of her estranged family. There's a bunch of expectations that her family has as to her when she is in town, and how her involvement in the investigation reflects back on them, and it's just a bunch of really cool tension that adds to the overall just mistrust and mystery going on between every character and Camille in this book. It is very well written, and I really enjoy it. This book does get very dark, warning, but I loved every second of it because it is well written. This book got 5 stars from me the first time I read it, and didn't review it because it didn't have a book 2. So I'm giving it 5 stars again. This book is a very fast read. I finished it in like a day. Also, the HBO show with Amy Adams is incredible. If you need some good entertainment after you read this book, go watch the show. Although I do like the book better. Anyway, that's it, because I could only read 4 books this week. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe and then hit the notification bell so that you can get my chaotic bisexual content whenever I decide to post it. Until next time, I'm Logan and this has been the Bi Book Boy, and I'm saying bye-bye.